Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and it's not Spawn year, it is day 56 of my comic review video day calendar. And I'm still on the road, I'm still in Nebraska. Jason is at a basketball tournament and is actually in watching a game right now. He was going to review this issue with me and read a few pages of it and went, Dad, this is exactly what he said. He goes, my comic book is too bloody. And he seemed really sad and disappointed because I've talked up Red Lanterns forever with him, and I didn't remember that the first issue was as violent and rough as it is, and I felt kind of bad about it. So I'm reviewing this by myself, and I'm doing it in the car because I didn't have a chance to review this in the hotel room last night, and I wanted to make sure and get a video out today. So I'm going to talk about this kind of briefly, at least for me. I'm just sitting here in the car. I've got to get back at this building here in a little bit. But let's take a look for a few minutes at Red Lanterns #1, which is one of my favorite books in the New 52, which isn't saying a lot because overall I was not real impressed with the lineup there, but there are a few things I liked a lot, like Supergirl, which ends up blending in with Red Lantern. She becomes a Red Lantern at one point, which is one of my favorite things that happened during New 52. I have never been able to describe and explain exactly why I enjoy Red Lanterns as much as I do. I'm not a big Green Lantern guy, but something about this whole idea and just aesthetic always really fascinated me, and there's a really cool kind of space opera here, especially later on as Blades gets her kind of head back together. She is, at the beginning here, very much not her own person, and as the Red Lanterns all get their faculties about them and become real characters, it's a really interesting dynamic, and it takes a little bit to get going. I don't know that quite enough happens in this first issue, and I don't know if I was super taken with it in the first place. I kept buying this. I could see a person reading this first issue and not being real impressed by it, because it's certainly not the kind of thing that stands great by itself. We're very much in a period, this is 2011, where we're beginning to, and have for a while, to be honest with you, really writing to the 4 6-issue arcs, as I've talked about a lot in the Comic Vault. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a once again, I'm just going to put my phone on the physical copy. This is a first printing from when this first came out. I didn't buy every New 52 issue that came out, of course. I just bought the stuff that I found interesting, and this is a series that I kept on, I believe, all the way through. I think I have every issue of the Red Lanterns run from New 52, and I even kept reading into Green Lanterns, where the main villain was the Red Lanterns in the first arc or two. And I fell off of that because I didn't think it was quite as good. But this is written by Peter Milligan with art by Ed Benes. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Peter Milligan is a longtime Green Lantern writer, one of the best of the few Green Lantern stuff that I've read. He and Jeff Johns kind of dominated during the period in DC right before the New 52, and it's somewhat, I don't think ironic is the right word, but it's kind of an interesting coincidence that after Red Lanterns, the next book that they were featured in, and I don't think he wrote this, but I don't remember, I'd have to go back and look, was Green Lanterns. Because he has the big Green Lanterns run just pre-New 52, just before this was starting, and I like what I've read of that quite a bit as well. I think he's got a real good just tone and a good sense of style for space epics and for kind of quirky sci-fi stuff. He's got a little bit of a James Gunn kind of sensibility, I think. I'm saying that retroactively after Guardians of the Galaxy, because this is, of course, 3 years before that. But maybe a little bit of an Abnett and Lanning kind of mode with with their Guardians in his Green Lantern material, but he's also kind of like Gunn, really good at blending the kind of odd offbeat comedy with really disturbing, sometimes horror imagery, and just kind of, reprehensible, detestable characters and themes. So of course, Red Lanterns is born very much out of Blackest Night and out of Geoff Johns' Green Lantern run, and where he's establishing the Spectrum. And the point of the Red Lanterns is, instead of being fueled by will, like the Green Lanterns, they're fueled by rage. And the really interesting thematic idea that plays all through this is, compared to will, and maybe it's the same, how difficult is it to keep up your rage? Can you hang on to your willpower forever? And if you're a Green Lantern, can you hang on to your rage forever as a Red Lantern? So Atrocitus has developed the Red Lantern Corps all by himself. It's his invention, and he's on this planet called Yasmalt, which is his base for the Red Lanterns, a real kind of exotic planet. And he has bathed his Red Lanterns, the creatures that got Red Lantern rings, in this pool of blood, and they lose their like I was saying earlier, their faculties, their intellect, their personality, and they become kind of zombies that are controlled by Atrocitus, and they're beginning to break out of that for some reason, and he's starting to get really self-conscious and second-guessing himself, wondering why exactly this is happening. And he thinks it has something to do with the fact that he's just going through the motions now and doesn't feel as enraged and angry as he did when he started at the Guardian, who he blames for destroying his planet. And we get Atrocitus's background here. I don't know how much of this is recap and how much of this is new. It might be that we didn't have much of a background at all for Atrocitus before this. I can't tell just taking a look at this, because this was my introduction, I think, to this character. I mean, I did read Blackest Night. Maybe he's there. I honestly can't remember now. It's been so long. I'm sure he is. So actually, this probably isn't straight up my introduction to him, but the first thing I read that really focused on him as hard as it does here. And so the idea is, and I assume some of this comes from lore that Geoff Johns created. I actually just reviewed Green Lantern Rebirth on the Comic Vault recently, and was able to get a sense of a lot of the retconning and retooling, and a lot of it is wonderful, by the way, that Geoff Johns does for Green Lantern mythology. And one of those things might be, unless this is Milligan's doing, I'm not sure, one of those things might be the way the Manhunters are handled. Not Martian Manhunter, but of course, when we talked about the Manhunters in an earlier episode of Not Spawn Year, but with an event from the late 80s. What was that called? I can't remember now. But anyway, the idea, I thought, was always that the Manhunters were robots, were androids that become self-aware, and this either retcons it or reveals, however you want to look at it, that the Manhunters were actually reprogrammed by a Guardian named Krona, who is Atrocitus's, in his mind, arch nemesis, to kind of prove that the best way to protect and save the galaxy is with beings that have emotion, and using the power of will with the Green Lantern rings. And I think this is a fascinating retcon, if it is indeed a retcon. The idea that you wouldn't get the Green Lanterns if it wasn't for not just the Manhunters being defeated, but the Manhunters proving through this Guardian that you don't want automatons to save the universe, you want passion, you want will. And so that's what he does, and they kill trillions of people throughout the galaxy. And it turns out that it's because that's what this guy wanted for the sake of the greater good, in order, in his mind anyway. It's real screwed up, in order to get a new fighting force that will actually protect people in a way that he doesn't think androids are capable of. And so Atrocitus is angry with Hal Jordan for taking his vengeance away from him. This whole thing is basically a twist on your typical revenge thriller, where you have these characters that have a general sense of rage because of wrongs done to them, and they want to take it out on characters that are like-minded to the people that did them wrong throughout the galaxy. And so the Red Lanterns are not sadists in and of themselves. They go after sadists. They're almost like Punisher on a cosmic scale. They go after anyone that they think deserves it. And so Atrocitus has developed the Red Lantern Corps in order to right wrongs throughout the galaxy, but not to protect people, but to avenge people. And it's a very selfish sort of enterprise. They're trying to avenge themselves more than anyone, of course. But the problem is, like I said earlier, it's really difficult to keep that up, to stay angry forever. And it's kind of interesting comparing Atrocitus to Batman. You've got a lot of versions of Batman where he never gets over his parents' death. And then you have some, arguably kind of like with Mask of the Phantasm, where he says, I said arguably, this is absolutely what's happening there, where Bruce Wayne says it just doesn't hurt as much anymore, where he still hates that his parents died, and he still feels the need to uphold this vow, but at the same time, he hasn't stayed angry. He hasn't stayed passionate about it, because human beings are adaptable creatures, and at some point, it starts to be easier, even if we don't want to admit that it is, dealing with those kinds of traumas and that kind of pain. And that seems to be what's happening with Atrocitus. So he has this ritual that I don't fully understand that allows him to look at all of the rage throughout the universe, or I should say, all of the things that should make him enraged throughout the universe. And a lot of it's on Earth for some reason. And he's able to see all of the wrongs done to people, and it kind of fuels his fire again, literally, and makes him want to, brings his confidence back up and makes him want to continue running the Red Lantern Corps. But the problem is, this is not happening for his creatures that follow him, and they're starting to doubt him or something. There's kind of a mystery as to what exactly is happening to them, but by the end of this, they say they want to continue keeping their rage up by going after Atrocitus. And here's Bleez, and she, along with the rest of the Red Lanterns, are ready to turn on their master. And so that's what's about to happen into the second issue. Meanwhile, we have a story brewing, and we don't really know why we're looking at it yet, with a character who is also enraged, and of course, he'll eventually get a Red Lantern ring, and that's what we're setting up here. And I think you could kind of guess that that's what's going on, but like I said, I don't know that it gets quite enough done. I think that maybe by the end of this issue, you'd want to either give him a Red Lantern ring, or at least make it clear to the reader that that's about to happen. Maybe a ring is like flying through space and is calling out his name or something, but the idea is, his grandfather has just been killed on the street for no reason at all, just a mugging. And this is, of course, a lot about characters who are just wronged with these horrible injustices for no good reason at all. it's all about sadism, really, and or people who are so out of touch that they're able to convince themselves that it's their victim's fault for what they choose to do to people. And so at the beginning of the book, you have two big examples of that. One is Interstellar and one is On Earth, where at the very beginning, you have this guy, and this is horrific, and I really should have opened this up before I let Jason take a look at it. Jason's 12 going on 13. Maybe he could handle this kind of thing. He was not able to, and I felt kind of bad about it, like I said. But you've got this guy who's being eviscerated and ripped apart, and he's missing a hand, and I'm probably going to get flagged for content here, even just showing this on YouTube. But you've got this sadist guy who is just going through the galaxy, pulling people into his spaceship and doing unspeakable things to them. And there's just because it's fun for him and that's how he gets his kicks. And there's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of a character parallel between him and Atrocitus, where he's getting desensitized to this. I think is the idea, that you can get desensitized both to violence and to rage. And at some point, you just cannot keep the passion up for it. And so he's getting bored and trying to figure out how to, keep himself entertained. And Dexstar shows up, who is Atrocitus's cat, and he decides he's going to skin Dexstar, not realizing that the cat is here in order to get its vengeance on this alien because of the unspeakable, reprehensible things that he's doing to people throughout the galaxy, including this guy that he's got strung up on the wall at the beginning. And so you've got that example, and then, like I said, you have the guy on Earth in the alleyway who's this 73-year-old Army veteran who's done nothing wrong except walk through this dark alley at night. If you live in a comic book universe, and really in real life too, but especially if you live in the DC or Marvel universe, or Image, or anywhere, not that, Image is its own universe, but I just mean like Spawn or something, stay out of dark alleyways. Never go in and out. You don't know what's going to happen to you. And even though there's superheroes that can maybe save you, or vengeance lanterns that could maybe save you, you can't count on that, and that could be kind of a traumatic experience all by itself. So anyway, this is horrible, of course. It starts to look like kind of an early 90s Image comic, and New 52 in general was more than throwing back to early 90s comics in its violence and its general edginess and kind of edgelordness. But anyway, so the idea is, and his name is escaping me because it's been so long since I've read these. I will try to find it. But that guy's grandson is really angry. Ray, that's his name. Ray, who will become a Red Lantern again, is upset with his brother for not prioritizing his grandfather, and he's looking for somebody to blame. So his brother hasn't really done anything wrong, but he's wrapped up in his own college universe, and this is Ray's brother, and he had an important thesis to turn in, and that's why he didn't rush to the hospital to be with his grandfather. He couldn't have done anything to stop this, but Ray is kind of blaming him because he put his thesis above his grandfather, and his brother, whose side I'm kind of on with this, is like, you need to grow up and stop looking for somebody to blame for something that is totally out of your control. But this is the kind of character that the Red Lantern rings are going to go after, and it's certainly not the way that everyone deals with these kinds of difficult, horrific things happening in their lives. But there is certainly a percentage enough of us that are this way, and there's maybe a little bit of that in everybody that it's certainly relatable, and it's just a really interesting thing to explore. The place that we can find ourselves in when we're grieving that makes us just look for something to punch. And Anyway, I still really, and I think Milligan is a really good writer for this kind of stuff. Maybe at some point I'll finally review this run, or at least the first, few arcs of Red Lanterns, because I've never done that, and I've talked for years about how much I enjoy it. I think the art here is stellar. Benes, if that's how you pronounce his name, had a pretty long stint with DC. He did some Birds of Prey and I think some Supergirl in the later issues with Peter David, and a lot of stuff in the early 2010s, late 2000s. And I've always really liked his kind of heavy outlined art style. These full-page spreads, particularly the Dexstar pages that I keep showing, I think are, really pop and jump out at you. And when I think of 90s period, this is kind of the house style that my mind goes to. Not to say that this is what all DC looked like then, but if DC had an overall kind of standard, it's the kind of stuff that Benes is doing here. He's not by himself the gold standard, but the art that I think I appreciate most during this period kind of looks like this. And a lot of New 52 is looking a lot more, again, like early 90s comics, but this is really sticking with what Green Lanterns looked like, and the Jeff Johns book and stuff. Look at where the Red Lantern ring is placed with Dexstar. It's on his tail. That's kind of fun. There's some really fun, absurd, quirky stuff in this, despite how it is as heavy as it is. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I'll see you again tomorrow with another one, and I should be back in my studio and not just on a phone. I hope this hasn't been too obnoxious to look at. Well, I've just been kind of floating my phone around, but thanks for bearing with me on this trip, and I will see you again real shortly. I am Captain Logan, and happy reading.